The White House has abandoned its pick to lead the Council on Environmental Quality. Very important position, and Newsy's been following this story very closely. The Washington Post first reported the administration will not seek confirmation for climate change skeptic Kathleen Hartnett-White. The newspaper says she, quote, failed to gather momentum with some Senate Republicans raising questions about her expertise. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and other Democrats have criticized her views on things like science, specifically on climate change. But the true cause of her withdrawal is much more complex. It's more colorful, it turns out. My colleague Mark Greenblatt has been covering Kathleen White for over a decade, down in Texas, now up here in D.C., and he helped expose one issue that led to widespread criticism before she stepped down. Mark, Kathleen White had an interesting turn this weekend. She's a new name to many people in Washington and in the U.S., but not to you. You've actually been covering her for like a decade?
Yeah, we've really been looking into her for some time. Now, Kathleen White, for those who don't know, is someone who was recently nominated by President Trump to be his top energy and environmental advisor on all things related to those issues across all agencies in the government. I picked her up when I was working for a previous employer, the CBS affiliate in Houston, Texas, where as an investigative reporter, we documented and really caught her red-handed at sanctioning the underreporting of radiation levels in public drinking water systems.
I know that was pre-Flint, but now anytime you hear drinking water and the public and underreporting, that's scary.
It is, and what she was doing back then in memos that we found were she was saying, well, if a water system has a certain level of radiation in it that actually violates federal legal standards for too much uranium or too much radium per se, she said, well, you know, look, this comes with a certain margin of error, and so if it's plus or minus 15%, I'm just going to subtract off the margin of error and actually help 15 water systems in Texas avoid federal violations and avoid having to do something to clean the water up.
So when she was going to be one of the top environmental or, I don't know, scientific advisors in this administration, obviously that was a red flag on your radar, because once she got to the Hill, she didn't go out there and say, hey guys, I'm just going to fess up and tell you I did this before.
Well, she didn't, and in fact, U.S. senators asked her about this very cover-up issue, per se, during her nomination hearing to become the president's top advisor, and she denied it initially in her initial hearing. She said, look, I would never underreport a health hazard, and so what happened was the U.S. Senate went and followed up with her and made her, in writing, really attest to all of these things that were just meticulously on the record from the prior reporting, and she eventually copped to it and said, yeah, okay, I did do that, but I still think it was an okay idea.
You think she goes away quietly? It seems like she survived in some way. She's now being called radioactive, which is an interesting turn of phrase, but does she come back?
Well, you know, we don't know, of course. You know, I mean, the president can always put her into another role, maybe perhaps not one that would be his top environmental advisor. So we just don't know. This is not the only controversy on this radiation topic that has sort of plagued Miss White. She's been very controversial related to things like her position on global warming. That's just been a very, very strong groundswell of opposition to her and to other nominees.
I thought this was a great example of, you know, when they say you need to support your local newspaper, your local news outlets on TV, this is why. Mark was working down in Texas, now in D.C. You bring these stories with you and bring accountability a decade later.